I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 meeting of the Select Board. I'm Beth Cassavant. I'm the chair. We're going to take a moment just to go around and introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Teresa Flynn.
Michelle Conlon.
John Samia.
Carlos Garcia.
Town Manager Kevin Mizikar.
Assistant to Town Manager Justin Dobson.
Great. Our first item on the agenda this evening is to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Second item is to review and act to approve the minutes of the meeting on December 19th, 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, with one abstention. Item number 3 is announcements and reports. I have one announcement this evening. It's that applications to serve on the 300th Anniversary Celebration Committee are due by January 12th, 2024. Just as a reminder to folks, we are going to be celebrating our 300th anniversary as a town, and it does take some time to plan the festivities around this, and so we are looking for residents who might be interested in serving on the committee. This is more of a steering committee. We're going to need a lot of volunteers to be able to bring to the community a wonderful celebration. And if you are currently serving on another board or committee in town, you are still eligible to apply for this committee. So keep that in mind if you're considering helping out on this ad hoc committee. I think it's a really great opportunity. Any other announcements and reports from board members? All right. Town manager's report is item number 4.
Good evening, board members. A couple updates from me. First and foremost, on behalf of all of us, I wanted to thank the DPW crews for being out during the storm over the past few days. Extend that to our colleagues in Selco. We know that it was a challenging 30-plus hour storm. Highway crews were in for over 24 hours straight from about 8 p.m. on Saturday evening through midnight on Sunday, and then returned at 4 o'clock in the morning or a little thereafter. We've had some unique challenges, as we do with every storm. The biggest wrinkle with this one is the rain that we're receiving this evening, so we had to prioritize away from our normal post-storm cleanup, away from sidewalks, unfortunately, which we know is challenging for folks, and move to opening stormwater inlets and catch basins so that we didn't, or hopefully won't, experience a lot of street flooding. So that has meant that areas that would have normally been addressed, or we would have cleared sidewalks by now after a storm of this magnitude, we haven't gotten to yet. So we just appreciate residents and their patience with us, but we really had to prioritize getting the storm basins open for today's rain and the rain overnight. So again, just main messages, thanks to all the crews that were out there for the extended period of time, helping keep things moving within the community. Second, I wanted to provide an update, as we had mentioned, I think probably most recently at the annual town meeting, that there's going to be some changes coming to our agreement with Worcester Emergency Medical Services for ambulance services. We've had a series of meetings with UMass and the ambulance service, and I can confirm at this point that we are negotiating an annual service agreement price with them. It's in the neighborhood that I think is going to be much more advantageous for us to fund that. Right now, we don't pay anything to them out of pocket. That doesn't seem to be a model that's going to continue to work, but as we negotiate this, I'll keep the board up to speed. It will be a part of the overall financial package that we present to town meeting, and hopefully we can get that detailed information out to the public before we present, or at the same time that we present fiscal projection 1 in the middle of February. So we are heading in a different direction with that. Same service provider, different contract model.
Right. Questions or comments? Right, thank you. Item number 5 is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31 to offer citizens the opportunity to provide public comments during Select Board meetings on matters within the board's authority. No one has requested to speak to the board this evening, but if someone in the future would like to address the board during the public comment portion of our meeting, we just ask that you let the manager's office know prior to the meeting, noon on Monday. Item number 6 is a meeting with Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations, Selco, for an overview of Selco's operation and plans for 2024. So we invite you up to the table. And once you're settled, if you could just introduce yourself for people watching at home.
All right, and I have a slideshow, if I could share my screen, so let's see if I can get that to come up here. Okay, looks like we're in business. All right, so, yes, my name is Chris Roy. I'm General Manager of Selco, and it is my honor to be here to present on basically all aspects of Selco business. And as you will see, there's a lot of content here, so it's certainly not intentional that I glance over any details. Happy to answer any and all questions. In the interest of time, I will try and limit myself to something below 3 or 4 hours. So, all right. So with that, one of my introductory comments here is one thing we find is that as through the normal ebb and flow of people that come to various communities, including Shrewsbury, it's important, given our unique model, to remind or inform and remind and just refresh, the enthusiasm we have for the great things and the uniqueness that we do have here. So one of the things, if you can see in the title here, public power, community-owned, resident-focused, and locally operated. So for a quick Massachusetts statistic, there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, of which there are 41, there's some caveats because some serve multiple towns, but there are 41 traditional municipal light plants. So odds are that folks that may be moving from other communities or have engaged with other communities, the odds are they're not familiar with public power just by sheer statistics. And so that's one of our broader missions as a business model across all MLPs and public power as across the country, is to inform folks about how great we are and the benefits that we bring. So you see in that theme, we have bullet point number 1. I'll spend some time on this, but we're owned by the communities we serve. So the first bullet point is more general about public power. In public power, I say that because it's generally the umbrella business, but if you look at Shrewsbury specifically, we have cable. There are others out there that have gas, that have water, that have other services. So when I say public power, I can't help myself. It encompasses those other services. So please keep that in mind. So that's where you see this includes for us all electric and telecommunication services. So one thing in our messaging that we cannot emphasize enough is we answer to the residents, not shareholders. That's a huge component that makes us unique and is a big driver to success. Service is our mission, not profits. Now that is, not a generalized statement for business models in general, but we are unique in the services we provide encompass the community as a whole. So service is the number one mission. And then with that, all revenue gets reinvested into the system. So there aren't dividends, there aren't shareholder payments. I could own shares of Pacific Gas and Electric in California. That is, but I have no idea if they have power or not, if there are wildfires or not, I don't know. But again, in our model, it is all completely reinvested in our system. So, dialing that to more local matters, Selco is your business. And so whether it's electric, cable, or otherwise, you'll see this is incredibly unique And we find certainly even our crews that go around town and you find new faces, you know, Shrewsbury is a desirable place to be. So you see a lot of folks that come in that just don't even know what Selco is or how we're different than perhaps a National Grid community where they came from before. So in many cases, a community relies on competition between utilities to drive that, you know, I'm not an economist, but to drive that competitive rate making, to keep service levels tolerant, you know, basically that competitive driver. Here, Shrewsbury is different. So in our case, as the prior bullet point indicates, the general you, as we have in the slideshow, you as the residents and the community are the business owner. You own Selco. And so you don't need to rely on competing outside private sector forces to compete with one another to potentially try and one-up each other to drive competitiveness. It's your business. If you want to change the rates, if rates are too high, then you'll see at a subsequent bullet point here, you just come to a meeting and say, hey, we think rates are too high. We have a statistic that says maybe this utility X is doing this differently. We feel like if you looked at some of their methodology, maybe you could be better. Like that's the indication that you don't have to use the competitive forces to do that. It's your business. You're in control. And so again, another noteworthy point to build on that, our strategic planning and goal setting is conducted by Shrewsbury residents. We have a Light Commission. The Light Commission is comprised of residents, your neighbors, and they set rates, service levels, policies in a way that's reflective of Shrewsbury. Again, very powerful model that really sets us apart. A couple other things that I would be remiss not to mention, so I had to include them. The local workforce, local presence. So everything is based out of offices in Shrewsbury. Again, without a comparative data point, perhaps one might not realize if you're in a National Grid service territory, there is no office to go to. If you are in Eversource in Boston, there is nowhere to go. If you need help with your bill, you're out of luck. There is no office to go to like we're in this building here. So that's one of those things that unless you have perhaps experienced it, you may not realize it. So that's a big value add to our business model. Again, that increased connection to the community drives a culture of maximum accountability. So we're here, we're part of the community, board members, employees, residents, we all are shopping together. We see each other on the street. It just drives an inherent interest in saying, I'm not just here to go to work. I'm here to make sure my neighbor has internet service back as fast as possible, power. That way, when I go buy groceries, they're going to say, great job, you know, we're so happy you're out there in the storm, you know. So that is something that it's hard to quantify, but it's really those things that make a major difference that if you had to experience both, you really see that stark contrast. And thirdly, we know the system better than anyone. Again, having the service territory that doesn't span multiple states. You know, if you ask perhaps Gordon sitting behind me, he could probably tell you every handhole, location, every pole number. It expedites emergency restoration. It just makes everything more efficient. And then back to the financial side, money stays local. So I know I'm going through each bullet, but I think these are important, so I wanted to spend the time on it. So Selco is the single largest financial contributor to the general fund in Shrewsbury. So that includes any private developer, that includes Verizon, that includes Eversource Gas. We're the single, if you look at, we pulled some of the files for Selco taxpayers, we're the single largest contributor to that general fund. And so, as a case study for that, there was some media attention to us looking at commercial properties. I did want to address something like that, where our current pilot contribution, payment in lieu of taxes, you'll see that in a subsequent slide. Currently, the formula is, a portion of that is based on plant value. So if Selco acquires a truck or a building or a business or anything, it's again that plant value times tax rate. So there is no impact. That just, instead of being, private building X, it becomes Selco, and that money is just subsequently shifted back to the general fund. All of that funding goes back to the local community. As you can see, actually, I'll quickly jump to the graphic. Realized our citation's missing from APPA, but they did a study. Every dollar paid to a public power employee circulates through the local economy 4 to 5 times. Again, we're local, we're here. Hard to quantify, but that's another one of those benefits that by having that local presence, we're contributing to the local economy. So then shifting back to the bullet points, as was mentioned in the town manager update, close relationships with other municipal departments result in further operational efficiencies, whether that be restoration during storms or plowing or routine construction. Those are other efficiencies that, again, aren't necessarily quantifiable as simply as in dollars and cents, but it really just makes things work a lot better. And then, just for good measure too, our Selco Cable, through our franchise arrangement, fully funds the SMC, Shrewsbury Media Connection. Okay, another big one. Again, like I said, I get really enthusiastic about this stuff. Selco is an economic engine. Okay, so some of these statistics that folks might not be knowing, but I think it's important for a forum like this and having it out there in the public for the record keeping, is we created this graphic here by comparing Selco's comprehensive set of services between electric, internet, and TV to your hypothetical person who might live in a neighboring community. In this case, we picked on Northborough, who might have Charter or National Grid. So you can see there a savings per month of someone, on average, we use 750 kilowatt hours for electric consumption, a 500 megabit per second internet, and then your typical extended basic TV package. $158.89 per month in savings. Round that up to $159. You're talking $1,900 annually when compared to that same house just over the line. And now, put in context, there's many different items that you could throw in this category, but that's when some of these statistics come out in the news, I do have to chuckle to myself sometimes. But take receiving an economic stimulus check every year over the last several years, right? We've seen issuance of checks of $500 or tax credits during 2020, 2021 that were on the order of $1,200 per taxpayer, or this is $1,900 every year for your average person. Someone where if you have the average area median household income, that's a 1.5% increase above that. 20% of the average residential tax bill in Shrewsbury. So just by having Selco services, you're already saving a fifth of what you pay on your average tax bill. And if you chose to invest it year over year in an interest-bearing account of 6%, that $1,900 per year would turn into $26,000. I bet there's a lot of things that most people could think of what they would do with that. So again, this is a material impact to the economy, which is why I'm enthusiastic not only about Selco, but about public power in general, as an economic engine for the Commonwealth and beyond, if we can repeat this model more broadly. So, with all of that in mind, I figured I'd go into a little more detail about what we're doing at Selco more specifically. And we'll start with the electric services, highlighting what we've been working on and some of our accomplishments. So here we have energy services and the roadmap to net zero by 2032. This often stimulates a lot of conversation, so I'll just go through some of the high-level bullet points, and again, happy to answer any questions after. So with all of the framework of our business model in mind, we're uniquely positioned to serve as the foundation for community sustainability. Right, our jurisdiction in this regard is power supply, incentives, Right, we don't have any say over anything beyond those particular levers to pull to work, work on, progress along the sustainability theme. But here's a few bullet points that sometimes get overlooked, is our lower rates incentivize electrification. So if you read in the news about, oh, it's tough maybe to compare EVs to gasoline vehicles, or replacing a furnace with a heat pump. Well, sure, when you're looking at rates that are double in IOU territory, that model looks a lot worse. But here in Shrewsbury, if you're looking at fuel switching from a gas vehicle to an EV with our electric rates the way they are, we've already incentivized that twofold compared to a National Grid or an Eversource. Our fiscal efficiency allows for more robust incentives. Again, back to our rate making, we don't run this, we consider this as part of our outreach campaign. It's part of our marketing. We're not spending money on ads. We don't, there's this Mass Save program. There's a lot of money in there that doesn't get directly translated to their programming content. Our operations take that dollar you pay and immediately transfers that to a program itself. And so that efficiency of cash flow allows for more robust incentives to make that dollar stretch a little bit further. And our programming and offerings are customized to Shrewsbury. So just to speak to our energy strategy, Shrewsbury emissions reduction. So the key to this equation, emissions reduction as a whole is part of our energy services roadmap here. Decarbonized power supply, which I'll speak to in a second, plus this electrification notion, plus our peak load management, more complex there, we're making sure we use electricity at the right times, is going to optimize emissions reductions in a fiscally responsible manner. So we have the Selco power supply policy. It sets a goal for fully non-emitting power supply by 2032. And we combine that with our energy and demand side management, DSM programs, where our priorities are heat pumps, EVs, and connected homes. So heat pumps and EVs satisfy the electrification component. Connected homes is your demand side management, allowing you to use that energy in those devices when it makes the most sense. And so in doing so are some of our recent achievements. So right now our power supply portfolio is 51% non-emitting in 2022. Again, just based on the lag in reporting. So we added this in 2023. We're expecting to be at 55%, and then we're expecting to be 60% in 2024. Just for comparison purposes, the private sector complies with the state clean energy standard, and right now that's at 44, 52, and 55 respectively. So that keeps us trending in a leadership position ahead of that curve. And again, significant emission reductions are associated with these incentives and our DSM program too. I won't go through this slide. It's there for questions or record-keeping purposes, but you can see our investment in incentives, how it corresponds to carbon offsets. If you're wondering what our 51% is comprised of, that table is there and the fuel source is there. And just another accomplishment that I'd like to highlight. Shrewsbury is the #1 town in the state of Massachusetts for more EV rebates since we issued our EV rebate program in 2021. On the operations side, I'll go through this pretty quickly. We have one of our biggest initiatives is our advanced metering infrastructure program. So that's bringing our metering system into the latest technological advancements. So that can help with outage detection, remote reads, live reads, integrated disconnects. Power quality is a great one, and transformer loading. That will enable a lot of things like innovative rate structures. As you see here, more efficient outage response, so you get a two-way communication. Right now, we're still heavily relying on people calling in today's day and age, but with AMI, it'll tell us and it'll tell you, as you'll see in a subsequent slide with Smart Hub, We've increased our interface with consumers so we can increase that two-way communication between us and the end user. So that's that information sharing. You can have access to the information for yourself. I mean, there are a number of stories out there, but once you have AMI, you'll have hourly reporting, and you can look and say this hour, hey, it looks like I was doing laundry, or someone was taking it. You can see your curve, and you can make your own decisions if you'd like about how you use your electricity. And then just to give you an update on where we are on the progress with that, as of today, we updated the numbers so that the presentation might look a little different from what you have, because we did make a couple small updates. 1,900 meters since September. All residential solar meters have been replaced, 90% of CNI customers. And then we're going to continue through 2025 until we get all of our 16,600 or so meters that are out there. And it's already proving beneficial. NIC and Smart Hub. So this is our enterprise resource planning system. It ties everything together. It takes all of this information and connects it throughout the organization from employee to customer. As you can see here, previously that was handled by 5 different systems that always didn't play nice with each other. This integrates the whole process. So if you issue a work order and the crew installs it and upgrades the asset management system, deducts it from the inventory system, it's all unified into one single stream of communication. What that also does is it takes the smart meter information, even the radio read, as you'll see, you get it on a monthly interval instead of an hourly interval. But you can pull in your customer and usage information. It imports weather data, so you can now see, oh, maybe my usage was a little bit higher. Oh, but it was 102 that day. So you can either go in there, answer your questions yourself. Our CSRs all have access, and so you can have that conversation. And then I mentioned some of these other things, asset and inventory management, our GIS, our mapping, lifeblood of our operations is integrated now. All the way to mailing. The list goes on. Here's just a quick graphic for Smart Hub. If you have not seen it, I won't go into the eye test of some of these labels. But there's your interface. This one happens to not be smart meters yet. That's monthly data. The black line is your weather trends, so you can see the correlation there. It helps with bill pay. We can push messaging and notifications. You can make service requests. So again, it's that, all in the name of that key relationship and ease of use for the consumer. Next slide is here, tooting our own horn a little bit. So general accomplishments, we got the EF Scattergood System Achievement Award, self-explanatory. Our commission chair, Bob Holland, received the 2023 Philip Sweeney Public Service Award for his amazing work with public power and public service in general. So that was a big honor for us. We've been designated the Smart Energy Provider 2022 through 2024. And then most recently, with respect to mutual aid, we have crews that are second to none. And so in our case, we were able to respond to Shrewsbury's needs quickly. And then we responded to Wallingford, Connecticut. And then this is right before Christmas. And as dedicated as they were, they opted to go up to, I think I'm saying this right, Calais, Maine, right on the Canadian border. So those folks could get power back before Christmas. And luckily, they were able to get it all restored, and they were back, I believe, Christmas Eve night. So they made it back. So that was a good story there. So we received a commendation for that. We can't applaud our crews enough. A couple of things, I'm happy to talk to that more at any point. We have battery storage and EV chargers coming up, so there's plenty more to discuss there. And then here, cable service update. This will be a little bit quicker. Some of this is a refresh And I feel like this was only maybe a month ago, but a year ago when we were here just talking about the franchise. So some of this, I'll go through a little bit quicker. So as a refresher, here's our phases build out map. So you can see here, phase 1, 2, and 3. We're currently in the yellow, phase 2. And if you want to view that map, the interactive map is available on the website there, on our website. And so there's some of the statistics for how we got to where we are today. The project was subdivided into 3 phases. As you can see, it's the first 2 phases cover most of the premises in town. And then phase 3 are your multi-dwelling units. So the numbers are lower, but the installations are slightly more complicated. We listed some of the challenges that we overcame. Obviously, starting in 2021 was probably not ideal. There were some challenges the world faced, but we faced those head on, and we kept the project on track. We still are facing, to some extent, the supply chain issues. So we've adapted our design and ordering process to minimize that as much as possible. As it stands right now, phase 1 construction's complete, that green area, and then we're continually reaching out to customers. And so right now, 69% or 4,200 are on our fiber system instead of the legacy plant. There's just some information on phases 2 and 3. So you can see some statistics. We're working on that as we speak. And we expect that the remaining 1,600 locations of this 5,000 will be completed next fall. And then we'll start phase 3. So Selco Stream, I did want to spend just a couple of minutes on Selco Stream. This is our over-the-top streaming service. There's a lot of merits to this, where every channel now is in high definition. You can get 3 streams, 50 hours of recording, bring your own device, whether you like to use Amazon or Apple or Roku or Google. It's your choice, or smart TV. There's restart and catch up features. And the channel lineup is actually more extensive. But one of the questions we commonly receive, which I wanted to get to, is why are we transitioning to stream? Why would we do this? And these slides, I'll get to bullet point number 2. So the media industry, as you might have experienced yourself or read about, is rapidly evolving to an application or app-based delivery. So right now, our legacy cable TV system is a coaxial cable-based system that goes to a TV box, which probably has been the same one that's been there for 10 or 20 years. That's not the model moving forward, where everything's going to an internet-based delivery system that leverages an app. And so as you can see, broadcaster content is migrating to internet-based distribution. This slide was written even before if you're a follower of the NFL, before the NFL games were being forced to go to Peacock. So, that's created a bit of a buzz. But again, you can see those are outside of Selco's control. We have to react and adapt to a changing operating environment. That's what this is. That's what Stream is. So we've brought up Stream. So in theory, app delivery combined with internet distribution, in theory, allows content to be viewed anywhere. So technologically speaking, that's where we're at. The next phase of this is our contracts with the broadcasters are still in the legacy system. And so what does that mean? Why technically we could deliver our content anywhere, and if you have a second home or go on a trip, you could take Selco Stream with you. Legally, we're not allowed to yet. So that's something we're working on. That's a major uphill battle, and something is, again, in the best interest of consumers. That's the Selco model. I'm going to politely say that's not always the focus of the broadcasters. And then we have a couple of other things to factor in. Our legacy cable plant signal software was deployed in 1998. We've received, I think we've got our money's worth from that. It reaches end of life in August. We're exploring different ways to make the transition or perhaps extend that while we deploy the fiber. But that is something that is also driving this transition as the software is also reaching end of life. And just worth mentioning, fiber does not support your typical coax delivery. And I won't read this list. I think there's a lot of nice pictures in there, but this is a snippet of our community outreach efforts through 2023. Many, or perhaps all of those, everyone's familiar with. And we have a lot of fun with those. I think those are great. So it's a good way to end this presentation is if you want to learn more, absolutely always call us. And we're always at these events and love to engage with everybody. And that's what I have.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from board members?
I have a less technical question. So with Selco Stream, this is the one thing I'm finding it very hard to give up the cable. How do we watch government TV with the stream? Do you go to the YouTube for a Shrewsbury Media connection? Is there a particular app? Like, how does it?
It would be, this channel lineup is the same. So it would be same, you tune into the same channels.
Okay,
And
so it's more just about the connectivity.
it's just the connectivity
Okay.
side. The interface
Now.
is different, but
It's on 24/7 in my house, not
Yeah.
because of me, but always something we're wondering about. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, do you see, without getting into the nitty-gritty, but
sure.
do you see that becoming more complex, and are the tools to combat it just as complex? So what do we see as the overall landscape or power supply, digital world, all of this stuff, but what do we see generally with that?
Great question. So the shortest answer is yes, absolutely, it's more complex. Anywhere from safeguarding our SCADA, being our basically remote control, SCADA supervisory control and data acquisition system, basically our remote monitoring control system for the electric grid, securing that, anywhere to the fact that, right, all these platforms are internet-based. So that is more complex. We have made adjustments with respect to our operations by hiring a cybersecurity consultant, if you will, that also does the friendly hacking. So they'll hopefully find vulnerabilities before a nefarious operator does. One thing that's perhaps worth noting is that they do see, while you might say in the grand scheme of things, in terms of scale, Selco was smaller than a multinational corporation. It is the data has shown that a lot of these operators use these smaller utilities as a test bed for activity before going to the major utilities. And so that makes it just as important for us to make sure we're prepared. So we're working on that. We've worked on some recent grant activity to continue to boost that, and we do have cybersecurity insurance. But yes, that's something that we look at regularly.
Okay, thank you. There's one other quick
course.
question. So I know early on, understanding locally owned, where the dollars go back into the community, understand all of that, and that's a benefit that we all enjoy. But one positive of many about competition is it forces efficiencies. So when you have monopoly per se, where are the efficiencies, where are they driven from in your organization
Yeah.
in Selco? What
Great.
drives that?
Great question. I would say my off-the-cuff answer to that is the accountability model. So the fact that, say, we'd even come to a forum like this and we have to answer to that. All of our records and budgets and everything are all public record. So just you have the transparency there, you have the inherent accountability to your neighbors, and so through that I feel confident in that being a productive way to do that, because as you can see, there's 41 data points in Massachusetts alone to show that those elements have resulted in more effective administration of utility services.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thanks.
Anyone else? I just had one comment. I think something that maybe you didn't really spend enough time on, in my opinion, is on the second slide, where it basically talks about the increased connection to the community and the I think just the benefit of having Selco be the provider of cable, internet, telephone, electricity in all of our buildings, right? I think that's something really, when you were bragging, saying, oh, we're going to toot our own horn, like that's something that I think the community really needs to understand, right? When we go to open a new building and that partnership exists with Selco to say, yep, we're going to get the internet up and working. We're going to make the power, turn on. I remember something went with the library, and I think it was probably before you joined the community. There was a pretty significant issue with the internet connection, and it was going to mean that the library wasn't going to open on time. And Selco worked with the contractor and the construction team and made sure that that was like fixed and brought, where it needed to be, and the building opened on time, and it was, just a great partnership. I think also the other piece, right, is when we're looking to attract business to the community, and we have the manager and assistant town manager and DPW go out and talk to these businesses, Selco's right there as a partner, right, because already there's an advantage coming to Shrewsbury for a business locating here, because there is that cost savings just from being a customer of Selco and knowing, your power is going to get turned on. It's going to be restored pretty quickly if it goes out. And I think that that is just a huge asset to the community when you think about what we would have to pay for the phone, for the internet, for the electricity in all of our buildings. Not that we don't pay, but it's at a different cost, right? And, I moved here 15 years ago, right with that ice storm in 2008. Our power was out for 4 days because we live on a street where it's like me and 2 other houses. Yeah. And I thought that's what it was like in Shrewsbury, and I put in a generator. Yeah. I've never, knock on wood, I've never needed to use it in like the 15 years because that's just not how it is here. And I just think that that's such an asset. And something that maybe people don't think about when they think about Selco is all the ways that there is interconnection between Selco and town operations. So I want to thank you for that. And I know you brought some people with you, and please feel free to introduce them. And, we extend our thanks to you for coming to this meeting and also for all you do to keep Selco, so strong in our community. People have such a positive perception of Selco, and there's always a lot of grateful people after a storm when power gets restored and cable and internet are back up and running. So thanks for that.
I appreciate it. That's a great story.
Oh, thanks. I like to share my story. How I spent all that money for no reason.
I also have a generator that I've never had to use in our house in 10 years, so thank you. Yeah. It collects dust. It gets started once a year to keep it working, but
Exactly.
taking up space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, item number 7, financial business is a fiscal year 2025 budget update, which I think is maybe a little bit more sobering than the Selco presentation.
It is. All right, so we are headed full speed ahead into the fiscal year 25 budget development, and I thought it'd be prudent to take the opportunity to recap and update fiscal year 25 revenue model, and then dive into 2 rather easily forecast or developed aspects of the budget, which include operating support and debt service. These 2 budget categories are sometimes referred to as fixed costs because they're driven through previous actions or actions directly tied to other aspects of our operations, and they certainly cross-cut all aspects of our operations, including municipal, utilities, education. So we'll talk about those. Collectively, these 2 areas of the budget represent between 20 and 25%, depending on the year and the phase of debt service that we're operating through, and we'll look at that debt service schedule that we're currently under. So if you could go ahead, Justin. So where are we right now? We're at the first big curve on the right-hand side of the screen. We are starting actual departmental budget reviews. Over the course of the last week, the town manager's office and HR department have met internally to review budgets, analyze staffing plans, look at goals, and develop our questions related to the strategic plan and other matters with regards to the individual department budget submissions. Earlier today, we held our first departmental review meetings. Generally speaking, it's kind of hard to assess the budget as it is because we need more dialogue and narrative with those departments. But from a dollar and cents standpoint, we're about $1.3 million over requested. So departments have submitted requests that exceed our expenditure cap by a little over 1.3 million. So I'll call that challenging, but not uncommon at this really early phase in the budget process. We have a lot of work to do, but that's what we'll be doing over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks to get to a balanced budget that we will present at the select board's meeting and then on to the finance committee. So if you could move ahead. So let's take a look back at the budgeted revenues that we have for fiscal year 25. We've made a minor adjustment in the utility revenue to kind of better model out what we've known from about 60 days ago when this was presented. So revenue projections are going to be very important to watch over the next 30 days, and I'll provide a little bit more information about that in a second. So good news, local receipts are up about $1.1 million over through the end of November over where we were in November of 2023. So that puts us in a really strong position to hold our initial revenue projection for local receipts, which is shown here at $13.5 million. Maybe a minor possibility that we could, if needed, because of other pressures, increase it slightly, but it's often hard to, really have an eye 18 to 20 months ahead of time when we're going to be collecting these revenues. But we're in a really solid point to hold that number at this point. Of course, local receipts is our fourth largest revenue category. Utility revenue is based upon user rates and other fees that we charge for specific services. The tax levy is our largest revenue source, which comes in at over 60% and now up to almost $112 million. But it's that second largest category that I am growing concerned about, which is state aid. So many who have heard news from across the state have seen that the governor made some announcements earlier this week that they're going to make some interim year budget cuts, and that's because state revenues are almost $770 million less than they expected at this point in the fiscal year, and that's down about 4% from where they thought they would be. So the governor on Monday announced $375 million in cuts to the current fiscal year, and unfortunately that does have an impact on Shrewsbury. It's a minor impact. We received, through the hard work of Representative Kane and Senator Moore, a $30,000 earmark to purchase new furniture for the library children's room, and that earmark has been reduced from $30,000 to $15,000. So although it's a challenge and it's not going to go without impact, it's a really kind of a best case scenario when you see a headline of $375 million being cut from the state budget. And that's a 9C cut, which is a section of the general laws that gives the governor unilateral control to reduce the budget whenever revenues are not on pace to meet the overall expenditure levels that have been set by the legislature. So if we kind of continue to turn that page and listen to what Secretary Gorkowitz is saying about the overall financial picture of the state, that's where we really start to get concerned about fiscal year 25. So the governor said that there's a new forecast for the current year that puts the state at about $1 billion less in total revenue collections than was originally anticipated from taxation. And the governor and the legislature have actually agreed to a consensus revenue number, which is the number that the state budget will be built upon for FY25 at $200 million less than was said to be available under the revised number for fiscal year 24. So revenues are declining. It's being felt at the state level. And that leads me to be concerned about that second largest revenue category that we have of state aid. Over really starting in the Baker-Polito administration and continuing into the first year of the Healy-Driscoll administration, state aid to local governments has been set at an amount equal to the overall increase that's anticipated in revenue across the state when it comes to unrestricted aid that we receive. So if that were to be the case, it would look like we'd be on course for a reduction in unrestricted general government aid. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But I wouldn't expect to see an increase in state aid. So let's take a closer look at that, Justin, if you wouldn't mind. So this is just a pie chart, yeah. So if we go to state aid in detail, that portion of general government aid is about $3.5 million. We are very conservative in our estimate at this point, and we're only adjusting upward of about $30,000, so that keeps us in a really good spot. Chapter 90 really should be unaffected by this because that is funded through a bond bill. School aid is something that I am worried about. It's our largest state revenue category. We've been receiving meager $30 per pupil increases over the previous years, and I really don't anticipate the state going above and beyond that for the upcoming fiscal year. So state aid as a category is not something that we're aggressive with at all because it's been very anemic in its year-over-year increases. But if we were to see a reduction in general government aid, a reduction in school aid, which I have no indication that we will, but if those things were to happen, it would have a real impact on our planning for fiscal year 24. So there's a lot of nuance into what the state's doing with their government, with their projections for fiscal year 25. There is, on top of their consensus revenue projection, another $1.1 billion that they anticipate from the surtax or the millionaire's tax, depending on how people refer to that. But we'll just have to see what plays out when the governor releases her budget on January 24th. So bottom line at this point, as we look at the revenue model, I'm really hesitant to make a recommendation to the board on overall spending limits, but I don't really see any possibility that we could afford to spend at the levels that we have in the most previous years because of this more uncertain economic conditions on the revenue side from state aid. And if the economy would continue to slow, it would certainly have an impact on that fourth largest revenue category, which is local receipts. So let's take a look at what we know, I guess, preliminarily in a couple areas of the budget. So operating support is several line items that are shown here on the screen. They make up a substantial part of our budgets. It's projected to be over $21 million for fiscal year 25 that benefits town, school, utility operations. So the largest single category is health insurance. We receive health insurance through a joint purchasing group called the West Suburban Health Group, where 10 municipalities across the Commonwealth share in risk and expense for health insurance. We're projecting at this point a 9.5% year-over-year increase. That takes into account performance through the first 4 months or so of the fiscal year, our overall trust fund position with the West Suburban Health Group, and just the general trend in medical inflation or year-over-year cost increases. So as health insurance needs to be moved by 10%, it's a $15 million line item in the current budget. So, it's a $1.5 million increase, which is a significant amount of money, and it's, over half of what we get through Proposition 2.5 alone. So it's quite a burden on the budget. but we do everything we can to manage those costs. That's the single largest category. Medicare match as an employer is something that we need to adjust as wages have gone up over the past few years, and total salary increases have come into play. Union contracts are settled. We didn't make an adjustment in fiscal year 24, but we need to make an adjustment in fiscal year 25. Unfortunately, it's a little larger than we would normally see on a year-to-year basis because we didn't make that adjustment last year, but we definitely need to get there this year. So that's a $1.3 million line item. The only maybe silver lining within this area of the budget is $630,000 in oil and fuel. The town has a great partnership with the city of Worcester, and we go together and do a joint procurement for oil and fuel. Leveraging the city and town buying power combined, we were able to get back to a fixed rate fuel, diesel fuel and gasoline price for fiscal year 25 or calendar year 24. Actually, it works on a calendar year basis, so that's better news. We may be able to shave a little bit off in this area, but that would be the only category I think we'd be able to adjust downward in operating support. Getting really down into the details, unemployment compensation is a challenge in fiscal year 24 for us, associated with some changes that were made on the school side of things at the end of last school year. We are outpacing the current funds that we have available. We'll continue to watch it over the course of the year. We may need a reserve fund transfer to compensate for the increased expenditures and unemployment, but I anticipate we could overspend that line item by about 50% or a little more in the current fiscal year. So we may have to make an upward adjustment there, but we're kind of modeling out the future. So that's operating support. Again, it benefits town and school. When it comes to health insurance, that split is roughly $10 million supporting school premiums, $6 million supporting town and utility operations on the town side. So a large revenue or a large expenditure category for us there. And then Justin, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So I know this is really hard to read. We wanted to get all the town's outstanding debt onto a single slide, kind of categorized largest annual debt service downwards to the smallest. So that provides us a range of $13,775,000 for debt service for fiscal year 25 for the Beal Elementary School. Police station is our second largest at about $2.6 million. Those are in the early years of repayment, and then we move into projects that are kind of early to mid-year repayment with the Sherwood Middle School and the Selco Fiber project and the water treatment plant. And all in all, we're anticipating a slight increase in total need for debt service between fiscal year 24 and 25, but 25 will be the highest year that we forecast moving forward. It's $12,562,000 is what we will need for debt service for fiscal year 25. And Justin, if you wouldn't mind going ahead. So when we look at this, what are we spending our money on? Where does our debt service dollars go? About $5.5 million is to fund school improvement projects. 1.5 is utility improvement projects, and $4 million. I skipped Selco. Another 1.5 is funded by Selco through their rate systems, and about $4 million to a variety of municipal capital improvements, and over half of that is, of course, in the police station, as we showed in the previous slide. So, and then one more slide. So how do things look in the future? I know that's a little challenging to see as well, but we're showing on the left-hand side of the screen fiscal year 24 out through fiscal year 29. The vertical bars are showing the total amount of debt service that we will need to pay on an annual basis. So you see a really good downward trend in our debt service obligations as we move into the coming years. That will provide relief to the impact of taxpayers could also provide opportunities for additional projects or capital improvements if those are needed by the community. If we choose to make more investments, just getting to those figures specifically. So over that period of time that's shown, by the time that we get to fiscal year 2029, we actually will have shaved $2.2 million in total debt service requirements on an annual basis. So for the tax bill itself in fiscal year 25, the average single-family home will pay just shy of $712 towards debt, so less than 10% of the tax bill, 8.6 to be specific. And by the time we get out to 2029, if nothing were to change, that would be reduced by over $150 on an annualized basis. So good news forecasted ahead for debt service. Overall, we're in a strong financial position. These are the two easiest budget categories to be able to predict early on in the budget process. We have a long way to go, but I did want to just reiterate my concerns about where we may end up with revenues. Something that was interesting that came up in some of our preliminary budget meetings is that we are once again going to be challenged to acquire motor vehicles. The motor vehicle, at least the domestic motor vehicle manufacturers, have kind of really slowed production because they have incentives to produce 2025 models in lieu of 2024 models because of their contract settlements. And they are introducing about 20% price increases on those vehicles in 2025. So we have heard that local suppliers, on one particular model that we actually use within our our fire command staff, a local supplier normally sells about 100 of those and receives 100 of those a year from General Motors, and this year they only received 6. So there's going to be a supply crunch and a cost increase that we're going to face again moving into fiscal year 25. So always some nuance that we're going to deal with. Be interested to see if it impacts motor vehicle excise tax for, those interested in buying vehicles, if they're buying domestic vehicles. But the manufacturers are saying this is a part of an impact from their recent settlement of their collective bargaining agreements with their staff. So not the best news, not a Selco story for me, but we'll continue to work our way through the budget process.
Yeah, real downer, actually. Yeah. But it's, a lot of work goes into this, and I appreciate that. And I, even if the news isn't positive, right, I think the story behind it is that we're always planning, and you and your team are always planning to make sure that we aren't surprised by budgetary changes and making sure that we aren't, having to make cuts that we weren't anticipating because we budgeted for more than we were going to have. So I think it's always better to be conservative and make sure that the public is aware of the work that's being done also, to make sure that the town's in the best position possible to deliver services that residents expect. Are there any questions from board members or comments? So I just, I had a couple. So just wondering any kind of conversations that you might have had. I know it's preliminary and this news about the budget from the governor just came out, but with Representative Kane or Senator Moore around what's happening at the state level.
Not anything in much greater detail. Representative Kane was able to let me know late on Sunday that the impacts are coming, but beyond what they're seeing in the budget process, nothing yet.
Okay, and then I'm thinking about like the school aid. We received $60 per student last year. So if that, I think we could probably model out if that's going to be a decrease, what does that look like, how much, so that we can start to plan for the impact, and obviously communicate that with the school department, as I'm sure they're also thinking through those same things. But for us on our own budget, maybe a plan, and I'm sure you're thinking of this, for where if we had to, we would make reductions.
Sure.
In order to make sure that we're working with the dollars that are available to us. So just something that we can think through.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, we can move on. Item number 8 under new business is to review and act on the proposed dates for actions relative to the May 2024 annual town meeting, and we have that memo in our drive. I'm not gonna read the whole thing out loud, but it basically starts in February 2027, February 27th, 2024, where we set the time and place for the 2024 annual town meeting. And this timeline would bring us to an annual town meeting on Monday, May 20th, 2024. And if that town meeting doesn't conclude in one day, we would then continue on either Tuesday, May 21st, or Wednesday, May 22nd. Or even, I suppose, depending on the length of the warrant and how long it takes us to get through it. Anything else you wanted to add on that?
No, we'll get this, if the board does adopt it, this is our first, planning tool that we can use with the community, and we'll make sure that we publish it. It does lay out all the public hearings that will be associated with various boards and committees, including Finance Committee and Planning Board throughout the process.
So this will be on our website if we approve it this evening for people to take a look, see when those public hearings are. All right. Take a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 9 is to review and act on the proposed revisions to Select Board Policy 24, which is mailbox replacements. So it does happen that sometimes a town vehicle will damage a resident's mailbox. And Nick Repetka from the Highway Division, he's our Highway Division Manager, proposed some revisions to the policy, just because the last time the policy was updated, which was in 2016, there was not as high of a cost to replace a mailbox. So basically looking to raise the cost to replace the actual mailbox itself from $15 to $25, which is more reflective of what it would cost to purchase a mailbox. And then the town also would replace the pressure-treated wood post, and that cost would be going up from $30 to, mailbox, an additional $30 for a pressure-treated wooden post. So the maximum replacement cost if a mailbox was damaged, regardless of what kind of mailbox it is, would be $55. So again, there's more detail in there if you wanted to read through it, and I'm sure that everyone has. But again, I want to thank Mr. Repetka for his thoughtful updates to the policy. And if there's any questions, happy to try to answer them.
Just one quick question. The post. So the section 5 talks about where the front of the box needs to be. Does it matter where the post is?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I do know that there's especially as we see, there's the traditional mount, and then we've seen things have to change, like along Main Street as we've added sidewalks, so
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a reason that that's not specifically defined, but I can
could-
certainly talk to Nick about it.
It's not something that would hold us off. I'm just curious.
Sure.
It's clearly it's the economics of it to me that's what's more important here, so don't worry about it. I was just curious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then if we're comfortable with this policy revisions, I would look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the proposed revisions to Select Board Policy 24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 10 is to review and act to request the Board of Assessors to abate a portion of the property taxes for 36R Old Colony Drive. So this is the portion, so we were gifted 36R Old Colony Drive, and that was accepted by town meeting vote on October 17th, 2022. And so what we're being asked to do is abate the portion of the property taxes that the owner of the property paid, and then for that time period when it was actually the town's. Am I correct in explaining that?
Yep.
So they had paid for it, it became a gift to us, we need to abate that portion, sort of to make them whole again, because it was a gift. and it's, the total property taxes for FY '24 were $752.70, so we're basically doing half of that. So about $375. Any other questions? Okay, take a motion.
A motion for the board to vote to request the Board of Assessors to abate a portion of the fiscal year '24 property taxes for 36R Old Colony Drive.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, item number 11 is a little housekeeping here to review and act on the renewal of the common victuals license for Demoulas Supermarkets, Inc., doing business as Market Basket. This was just left off of the renewals that we did at the end of 2023, so just correcting this.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 12 is to review an act to authorize the chair to sign the award letter supplement for the Massachusetts Housing Partnership Technical Assistance Program for 33 to 69 Green Street. So this is a 40B technical assistance grant from the Mass Housing Partnership for Emerald Run, which is the Pulte development located on Green Street. And it's up to $10,000 in funding to assist with review of the Chapter 40B comprehensive permits for the project. I don't know if there's any questions on that. Comments? All right.
Motion for the chair to sign the letter as noted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that brings us to correspondence. Item 13 is an email dated December 15th, 2023, from Dan Hertzlinger, PWS Senior Project Manager at TRC Companies, regarding the EENF MEPA filing for National Grid. Item number 14 is an email dated December 15th from Owen Kramer, Wetland Scientist at Goddard Consulting LLC, regarding the MEPA SEIR filing number 1647 for Patrick Subaru. This is their location on the corner of South Street and Route 9. Item number 15 is an email dated December 30th, 2023, from Ramesh Razdan, 94 Stony Hill Road, regarding supporting Shrewsbury's journey towards sustainable living. So Ramesh and Sunita sent this email to the board at the end of 2023, basically asking about a curbside food collection service for the town. And I want to thank Gosha Stolarska from our DPW department. She's the solid waste and recycling manager, for helping me to craft a response back to the residents, basically outlining, really, I was surprised at the process that's been undertaken so far in investigating food waste collection options for residents, and getting back to these residents and letting them know that this is something that's sort of on the radar screen, and trying to work through the best possible option for our town. So that's, that response was sent and will be shared with the rest of the board. Item number 16 is an email dated January 3rd, 2024, from Michelle Pallone, P.O. Box 143, Northborough, Mass., regarding the trash recycler. So she sent this email and she was asking if Casella would take cardboard boxes folded into one another, which is what she experiences with waste management. Her concern being that she wouldn't be able to fit all of these boxes into her toter. And as we talked about previous meeting, when Casella takes over in July of 2024, every resident will be getting a large wheeled tote in order to put their recycled materials in. And so I worked with Mr. Baldinger on a response to the resident, and basically stating that, we do believe that because recycling will be picked up on a weekly basis, all materials, single stream, that it should work out. She also mentioned that she is handicapped and she's not sure that she's going to be able to move the tote, and we did talk about how, if that's a problem for her, we would find a way to make sure that her materials were collected. Item number 17 is an email dated January 5th, 2024, from Gretchen Schultz Ellison, 24 Spring Street, and Diane Jones, 29 Francis Avenue, on behalf of Tipping Point 01545, regarding CARP, Climate Action Resiliency Plan's service results. those two residents came in and spoke to Mr. Sammy and I this evening at office hours. We talked through some of the results of the climate action plan. So a response likely will not be necessary because they received it in person. And then the last two are ZBA decisions. 18 is a ZBA decision of December 18th, 2023 for Michael Cassis for 2 variances for property located at 130 High Street. And item number 19 is a ZBA decision of December 18th, 2023 for Matthew Merva for 2 variances for a property located at 103 Holman Street. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. So if there's nothing more to come before the board in open session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move approval. I'm sorry, move, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.